Ace Attorney 6 came out nearly 8 years ago. Jeez, where does the time go? I mean, it's not like the series is completely dead. It's been getting collections pretty consistently, so it's more like it was just put in a coma. Still, I would like a new game, please. I'll even take a spin-off at this point. Trucy right, Ace Magical Assassin. I'd buy that. This is an idea I've had on the back burner since 2018. I never made it because I was kind of knee-deep in school and had no writing or video making experience, as well as just being a lazy fat ass. But now that we're getting like the Apollo Justice collection, and it's not like I can delay as the next entry forever, I decided to dust off this old idea and make a video of it. I actually found a very old Google Doc of it, and it's blank. I guess I didn't really get very far on this then. I was gonna do this whole thing of rereading my old ideas and laughing at my younger self for being a stupid bitch. But now I can't do that. I guess I'm not allowed to have fun. Based on the title, I specifically wanted it to be about Athena. And I will say that sentiment really hasn't changed. For Ace Attorney 7, I would like Athena to be in the driving seat. This is mostly because she hasn't really had anything, like at all. Like, she has her story in Dual Destinies about killing her parent, which, you know, I guess is clearly the first step for getting your own game, so good to see her planning ahead. And then in Spirit of Justice, where she's just kind of there, like an appendix. She desperately needs the development, so for this video, I think it'd be fun to explore the different avenues they could take her story. But as I was writing my ideas, I kind of realized that it derailed from what would Ace Attorney 7 starring Athena would be like to, hey, let's completely set up the structure of Ace Attorney 8 while we're at it too. Because I guess I just can't fucking control myself. This is gonna be another side project that just blows up in scope, isn't it? Okay, let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. Let's talk about Athena and her own game and not the game next that I have in my mind, because that's how things are supposed to work. Could you imagine 9 eating 7? That'd be stupid. Okay, so with the assumption that Phoenix is just gone out of the picture, Athena is the main character. Now what? What will her story be? Why do I ask myself these questions? I already know the answer, fucking stupid bitch. Well, I think the first and most obvious thing we need is to find out exactly what Athena's personal journey will be. Many people over the years I've realized have complained that they felt like Athena should be more than capable now. Like, even after Dual Destinies and the Spirit of Justice, she's still heavily struggling and always has to have someone come by her side and help her out. So why not lean into that? Her main story could be just her getting really frustrated with her lack of growth and how she continues to need to rely on others to help her out. Of pickles. Like, over the course of the game, she can like question whether this whole lawyering thing is even for her, if she struggles this much with it. Like, I know growing as a lawyer has always been kind of like a theme in these games, and even kind of a focus to some extent, but I want this to be taken to the extreme here. Really have Athena doubt her own abilities and question herself. Like, completely destroy her morale and have her crawl out of that. What would cause her to reach rock bottom? She fails. She gets a guilty. The person she's trying to protect gets thrown in prison. That'll fuck her up. I think it would be interesting. Have a case end with a guilty verdict and not have it be a happy ending or overturned in the same episode. Like, now obviously this would need to be corrected by the end of the game. The final case would absolutely be like a retrial to fix the wrong, but this time Athena would be ready.
That's assault. And this is pepper.
I think the ultimate conclusion that she comes to is that the lessons and tricks that Phoenix tries and like Athena attempts to mimic just doesn't really work for her. She needs to find her own niche and how to tackle these cases in her own way. Like, I know they kind of already emphasize her whole emotional thing in Dual Destinies, but I mean, like, okay, that's a very basic, not an all in-depth story idea, but like, I didn't really want to get too thoroughly into it, because if I did, then this video would be longer than Egg Tempest Dual Destinies review. How do you make a video that long for what's the visual novel equivalent of oatmeal? But I still should probably lay out the structural flow that the story will follow through on. The first case will be your general tutorial case. Phoenix would be present, and it would showcase how Athena is still struggling with her whole lawyer thing. By the end of the case, this would be when Phoenix leaves to go after Trucy, which I'll explain later, leaving Athena by herself. Next case would have Athena on her own for the first time. No Phoenix, no Apollo, Blackwell won't be there either, at least not for the trial portion, and it goes very badly. She fails, gets a guilty verdict, and now is completely crushed. So for the next case, she's very down in the dumps, just almost contemplating giving up. So her friends, or whoever's around at this point, would put together a mock trial. Yes, the next case would be entirely a mock trial. A completely fabricated case that would really help Athena get into the swing of things and really practice and figure things out and test different approaches in a low-stakes environment. I always thought that like a case around a mock trial would be cool. Like, that that moment in Dual Destinies was always really fun, so seeing that expanded upon with many of the characters we've seen fitting in different roles, like you can have Maya actually be the murderer, that would be hilarious. The fourth case would be taking that mock trial and putting it into practice, using what she's learned and her revelations from the mock trial in a serious environment. And then the final case would be a retrial of case 2, where she bounces back, rights the wrong, and fully becomes her own. I feel like that'd be a good storyline to follow. I do think that's something this series needs at this point. After taking down a fucking monarch, it's probably a good idea to take a step back a bit, like a really big step back. Although I did say that she would find her own niche ways of tackling cases on her own, but what would that even be? Well, for that, let's dive into Athena's emotion thing. That's always kind of been her main gimmick, emotions, therapy, and so on, but I always felt like it was very heavily underutilized, both as a story tool and a gameplay mechanic. In terms of gameplay, I don't know, it's always been kind of lame. Like, you just gotta try to find the contradictory emotion to the events unfolding. Great. Super limiting. There's only like 4 emotions. Hell, by the second game, you could really feel that they were stretching to find some unique aspects for this gimmick to be interesting. I think this comic by Awkward Zombie really exemplifies my problems with the whole thing.
I can pinpoint emotional contradictions with the Moon Matrix. It lets me examine all of a witness's emotions: happiness, anger, sadness, and surprise. Now, Trucy, how did you feel when you saw the thief? I guess I felt concerned.
So I think it would need to be completely reworked, which I don't even know where to begin with that. I thought maybe it'd be interesting to have it on, like, kind of constantly active in a way for every testimony, but that doesn't really fix the issue. In fact, it probably would just make it worse. So I thought it would be best to just scrap entirely and kind of take a new approach with Athena. Like, maybe lean into the whole therapy aspect, like actual therapy, where we really have to dig into them emotionally and figure out the underlying problem and help them to get through it, or whatever's preventing them from telling the truth in court or something. Hey, you know what? It's better than match the colors like it's fucking Sesame Street. I don't know what the actual, like, gameplay aspect of it would be. It is a little silly to do therapy in a courtroom with a bunch of strangers as witnesses, but I don't know. It's also Ace Attorney. It's a cartoon world, so I also just think Athena utilizing her talent would just be very interesting. Not only that, but you could make it where, like, it's a continuing theme with all these cases that some of the characters have mental health issues and disabilities and such. I think Uendo, who's a character with dissociative identity disorder, really shows how much potential this has. He's like one of the best one-off characters in that game. It would really give this game its own identity, you know? Athena's technically a therapist, so let her do some real therapy things. That's all I gotta say about that, really. I guess the next part would kind of move on to the prosecutor. That's always like a major thing in these games. Honestly, I have no idea what to do with this fucking guy. I thought of many different ideas, like the prosecutor themselves is a novice and struggling, but when I thought about it, that would kind of make Athena's journey like a little undermined. Like, the whole thing I put together is her growing as a lawyer and actually becoming her own, and what, her way of doing that is to beat someone who just started? You really showed them. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I thought that maybe we don't really need a new prosecutor, at least not for the game I laid out, because I feel like that would honestly kind of take away focus from Athena, because for the new prosecutor, you'd need to think of a story for them, what they're going through. I mean, I guess you don't have to do that, but what's the point of even having a new prosecutor at that point? So what I would do is just kind of bring back some of the old prosecutors. I just have Blackwell for the first case, because, you know, it's just a good tutorial case, nothing too serious here. And then for the second case, that's when I would have Winston Payne. I know the second case is when Athena loses, but that's why I want Winston in the second case, because it would just make her failure all the more bitter, like losing to this fucking guy. For the third case, I don't know, the prosecutor could kind of be anyone. Edgeworth, Clavier, Blackwell, it'd work. They're just friends helping out Athena. Hell, you could just cycle them out throughout the case. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe all 3 of them at the same time. Fuck it. The fourth case, you'd go against Winston again and then beat him. And then the final case would be when you go up against a real prosecutor, like Blackwell or something, and then beat him legitimately. I feel like that'd probably be the best way to do this whole prosecutor aspect. Again, I feel like this would all be set up to help Athena's story. You have Winston, who she fails, which is embarrassing. She then comes back and defeats Winston, and then finally defeats a real prosecutor who is like actually good at their job. Just really puts a whole lot of emphasis on the whole growing as a lawyer thing. Alright, this is the part where I just say a bunch of miscellaneous stuff here. Who's the detective? Who's the assistant? Is the judge dead yet? For the detective, I actually kind of have a funny yet somewhat mean idea. While investigating in the second case, you're told about how Detective Gumshoe is on the scene. So we're going around investigating and stuff, and suddenly someone shouts, "Hey, this place is for authorized personnel only, pal. We expect to see Gumshoe just for Maggie Bird to come onto the scene." But her name isn't Maggie Bird anymore. It's now Maggie Gumshoe. I think that would be kind of cute in a way. She got married, became a detective, and now she and Gumshoe eat cheap ramen at a candlelit table every night. True couples goals. I really don't know who the assistant would be. Juicy's not here for reasons, once again, I'll get into very, very soon. Blackwell would be interesting, but like I said, I wouldn't want anyone coming to like Athena's rescue, you know? You couldn't have someone who's actually experienced in law helping her out. So maybe just Pearls. I think that'd be cool. And that's about all I really have for ideas for Ace Attorney 7. I kind of realized that as the points went on, they became less structured and more just like, well, it wouldn't be cool if this happened. But that's mostly because I only had the main points set out. Like, I just think the idea of Athena having her own personal journey and growth in of itself to be the interesting part, and everything around that has just kind of helped supplement that, you know? But now that I got all that nice and out of the way, I can move on to the next part that I've been insinuating this whole time. What's happening with Trucy and Phoenix? Why are they gone? How am I gonna make that happen? And how does this set up for Ace Attorney 8, as I mentioned? Well, I'm getting into that now, so let's write some fan fiction. Okay, so I know from the start for Ace Attorney 7 that I don't want Phoenix to be involved, like at all. I don't even want him to be like an assistant. I want this to all be the Athena show, baby. So first things first, how do we get rid of him? Now, it would be easy just to say to murder the shit out of him, but I'm not gonna suggest that. We just need to make him leave, to make Athena the only person in the office. I think the way to do that would be to use the whole sibling plot that the games have been dangling in our faces for over a decade now. Okay, so this is gonna sound a little out there, but just bear with me here. I think that Trucy somehow finds out this information about her and Apollo being siblings before Phoenix gets to properly explain it to her. I can imagine Phoenix and Lamoire discussing it and Trucy overhearing it from the door. This leaves Trucy in a very emotionally conflicted place. You'd think she'd be happy about this info, and in a sense she is. She thinks the idea of Apollo being her brother is amazing. What she'd be upset about though is that Phoenix kept this information from her, especially for so long. She'd be very confused. What reasons would these two have to do something like that? Or even keep it from Apollo for that matter? At this point, they're both adults, and even if they weren't, shouldn't she have the right to know the information about her own family? Her brother, someone who was literally right there the whole time? She'd mull over it for a little bit, thinking maybe Phoenix would have some good reason for why he did this, but she can't really think of one. It's not like she had to stay away from Apollo or anything, and she's been in incredibly dangerous situations despite that, so why? The more she dwells over this, the more upset and angry she gets over it. After a week, she ultimately makes a decision. She's going to head over to Kurain and live with Apollo instead. She'll be the one to tell Apollo how they're siblings and how Phoenix has been keeping this a secret for no reason. And since she's 18, that means Phoenix no longer holds any authority over her. He couldn't force her to come back if he wanted to. She would leave a note and head off, in which when Phoenix returns, he'll read the note and quickly follow her, leaving Athena by herself. Yeah, I admit, it's a little bit dramatic. The way I get Athena by herself is by breaking a family apart. Good going me. To be honest though, I feel like this whole thing with Trucy, Phoenix, and Apollo would make a good setup for Ace Attorney 8. Athena would have her own adventure in the States for Ace Attorney 7, and then we could follow up on what was going on with these three numbskulls in Kurain for Ace Attorney 8. Now, I know many people watching this video are looking at this like, what the fuck? This seems a little forced, don't you think? Like, is this something that's really in character for Trucy? And on the surface, it might seem that way, but honestly, I don't think it is. It's been described that Trucy's like happy-go-lucky attitude is a little bit of a facade, a face she puts on to hide her deeper sadness and like how she feels inside. They kind of expand upon this in like Spirit of Justice in Case 2, but I feel like I could go further with it. Not only that, but I feel like this situation is a big enough deal that it'd make anyone upset. Like, Trucy's always kind of had family issues. Her mom supposedly died, her dad left her, the entire Gramarye troop is a bunch of assholes. She probably felt a bit lonely, even with Phoenix. So after all that, to learn that this one guy you grew close with was your brother the whole time and you only learned that after he's already left, I think it would be pretty upsetting. Nick had all this time to tell them when they were together, and he only finds it appropriate to tell them now when they can't really hang out anymore. I mean, he didn't tell her in this setup, she eavesdropped, but you get what I'm saying. And finally, well, she wouldn't make the decision to leave immediately. As I said, she would dwell over it, and I think the big thing that she'd be the most upset about is that these two seemingly don't really have a good reason not to tell them. They're only saying things like, oh, we'll tell them when they're ready, or when you're ready, or when I'm ready. Like, what do you two mean by that? Just to spend all this time thinking about all the reasons why they would do this, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. They wouldn't just lie to her for no reason, would they? Especially Phoenix, right? But unfortunately, the more she thinks about it, the less reason she sees for them to do this. Even if there was a reason, she kind of starts caring less and less about it. All she knows is that Apollo is her brother. These two kept that from her for so long for seemingly no reason, so she makes up her mind. She will go and live with Apollo. I also don't think it's really that brash of a decision either. Apollo and Trucy clearly care about each other a lot. She helped him in the trials, did magic shows together, albeit against his will. He helped her when she was accused of murder, and most importantly, he never lied to her. This wouldn't be like going over to some vague uncle's house. This is Apollo, her brother, the person at this point in time she trusts the most. Now, the next thing to think about is why not just talk to them about it, which is true, and that kind of leads me to how Paulo would react to this. After Trucy comes to see him and tells him everything, he probably would be left more confused than angry. He too would be confused on why they would keep such information from them for so long, but would be more willing to talk to them about it. It's important to remember, as smart and mature Trucy can be, she's still pretty young. Apollo is much older and is also a lawyer, so trying to dig for info just fit him more. It also could work from a gameplay standpoint, but which sounds a little underwhelming. Like what, after all this, it's just resolved by Apollo talking it out with them? No. That leads to the final part of this, which would be the whole pillar in terms of family drama. After discussing it with these two, it's revealed that Trucy's suspicions were correct. Phoenix and Lamoire didn't have a good reason to not tell them. They were just being selfish, which I know sounds grossly out of character, especially for Phoenix, but hear me out. Phoenix would not have done this maliciously, obviously. Look at the fucking guy. I do think at the beginning, as in after the events of Apollo Justice, he opted not to tell them because of just all the other shit they just went through. Like at the end of it all, could you imagine just Phoenix dumping that on them? I think Apollo would have just freaking collapsed. So he decided to wait. But as time went on, there was a deep underlying fear that Phoenix had that if he were to tell them, then would Trucy want to leave? Go to her quote-unquote real family? Lose the only family he's had up to that point? Once again, I don't think these would be active thoughts Phoenix was having. These were just subconscious fears that he built up and used the whole, oh, I'll just tell them when I believe they're ready thing as a way to cover up those feelings. Ironically though, by trying to prevent losing his one and only family member, this would lead to him losing her anyway, and in a much worse way. For Lamoire, it's kind of a similar thing. She was afraid how they would react. And she kind of has this own like self-deprecating thing about her, like, oh, do I really deserve to tell them? Am I really even their mother at this point? Do I deserve to come back in their life after being gone for so long? You know, stuff like that. But would still ultimately be selfish because they do have a right to know, regardless how she feels about the matter. Now that I'm sitting here reading it, I do kind of realize this all sounds like melodramatic fan fiction, and, well, I mean, that's exactly what it is. But even then, I do think it could be a very interesting setup. Like, after Apollo learns that these two didn't have a good reason to keep the secret, even he would have a hard time defending them in this. He still wouldn't be, like, really mad about it, just grossly disappointed. But he also doesn't want Trucy and Phoenix to lose each other, so over the course of the game would be a balancing act of trying to fix these two while also trying to adjust to the fact that Trucy and him are siblings, while also learning that Delacia is their mom. I forgot to mention that. That would also be another thing they'd have to deal with. It would just be a really messy situation that Apollo would be smack dab in the middle of, while also dealing with, you know, rebuilding a legal system. So there's definitely a lot of work with that. That's kind of all I got for the whole like sibling thing for Ace Attorney 8. I don't know how it would be resolved or what the overall story would be or like how Apollo would balance any of this or what the resolution would be. Basically, I have nothing fleshed out at all except for the intro. What do you expect from me? I'm just the ideas guy. I just know that I think the setup in of itself would be interesting. After establishing that, I was going to do a segment where I go over more general story ideas that I think the franchise could take, but I don't think any of them would really work with the current characters we'd have. It would kind of need to be a story for like a reboot of a franchise or just unrelated characters entirely. Like, they're not really all that fleshed out anyway. Like, this is already a pretty casual video, but even those ideas are too much of a scattered mess that would probably just not be worth delving into. Overall, I think with my Trucy and Athena's ideas, it's obvious that I kind of want more personal stories for these characters. Recently, we've been focusing so much on like fixing corrupt governments and overthrowing a kingdom that I feel like we've lost a little bit more of the character-driven stuff that many of the previous games are known for. Like, the first Ace Attorney game was basically just about you helping an old childhood friend. I want more of that. I'd be interested in hearing all your ideas. Let's turn this comment section to AO3, but with less porn. I hope.